What is going on, everybody? Hello. As you know, my name is Amir, and this is Amir We Go Again. This episode, we're going to tackle the question, in what ways is Jack a literary vampire in Lord of the Flies? Now, you might think that this is an odd or a strange question, but in Thomas Foster's book, How to Read Literature Like a Professor, Foster says that literary vampires are people who use others to gain power. If you're like me, whenever you think of vampire, you think blood, sharp teeth, garlic, a steak, and can transform themselves into a bat. However, Foster takes it further in a way that anybody could be a vampire. In Lord of the Flies, Jack functions as a literary vampire by feeding off fear, the boys' loyalty, and their innocence, leaving behind chaos on the island. Just like some leaders in history, Jack didn't build, he fed. He didn't leave behind peace and civilization, but left behind destruction and chaos. So let's start with fear. In Chapter 3, page 16 of How to Read Literature Like a Professor, Foster says, but it's also about things other than literal vampirism. Selfishness, exploitation, a refusal to respect the autonomy of other people just for starters. This explains Jack perfectly. In Chapter 5, page 82, Ralph says, the thing is, fear can't hurt you any more than a dream. But Jack doesn't want fear to disappear. He feeds off it. Jack needs the fear on the island. And so we see in Chapter 8, page 126, Jack states the beast is a hunter. Jack takes this beast, a fake imaginary monster, and tries to twist it to make it real to the boys. Then he tries to show himself that he is the only one that can fight against this beast. This is how he gains control over the boys. And if this to you sounds familiar, then you're not wrong, because leaders like Adolf Hitler in history did this exact same thing. After World War I, Germany had tons of fear everywhere. They had fear over their weakness, their economic collapse, and the Treaty of Versailles, which had set back Germany by a ton. Hitler used this fear and gained power in Germany. So let's move on to loyalty. Foster in Chapter 3, page 16, he says, refusal to respect the autonomy of other people. Jack doesn't want to be equal with the boys, but he wants the boys to submit themselves to him. And so we see in Chapter 10, page 159, the boys state he's going to beat Wilfred. What for? Robert shook his head doubtfully. I don't know. He didn't say. We see through this that Jack no longer needs a reason to do things. He simply tells his hunters, and they do. In Chapter 9, the chant they say show that they follow him without thinking. Jack isn't just giving them food, but giving them food to feed off their loyalty to him. And we see in Chapter 8, page 127, Jack states, I'm not going to play any longer, not with you. And at this point in Lord of the Flies, Jack essentially, he locks in. He creates his own tribe and doesn't treat the island and being stuck as a joke anymore. This is similar to Joseph Stalin, the leader, a past leader of the Soviet Union, where he had demanded loyalty to him, total loyalty. he would punish anyone who disagreed with him, even without a good reason. Don't ask me what he did to people, but just know it wasn't pretty. Jack's leadership wasn't built on trust of the other boys, but the submission and fear of punishment. Finally, the innocence that Jack feeds off. In the beginning, the boys are just some boys who are lost, with many of them scared and many hopeful to be rescued. But under Jack's rule, their innocence is gone. Just gone. Foster writes in chapter 3, page 19, "The essentials of the vampire story, as we discussed earlier, an older figure representing corrupt hour or values, a young, preferably virgin female, a stripping away of her youth, energy, virtue." This does not essentially have to be a female, but can be anyone who fits this description, because this explains Jack again, as we see in the book, him stripping away all the other boys' youth and their energy and dive into this savagery. One of the saddest moments in Lord of the Flies is Simon's death. In Lord of the Flies, chapter 9, page 154, Golding states, "Softly, surrounded by a fringe of inquisitive, bright creatures, itself a silver shape beneath the steadfast constellations, Simon's dead body moved out toward the open sea." Simon represented and wanted truth to be part of the island, and Jack's chaos, fear-driven chaos, made his death possible. Showing honesty and truth doesn't belong on the island. And later we see in chapter 11, page 156, Jack says, "That was murder." Ralph says, "That was murder." He isn't wrong. Not just murdering a little boy, but innocence as a whole. We see this happen in one of Cambodia's past leaders, Pol Pot. He trained children to become killers and turn on everyone, just like Jack. He took the innocence and created violence and chaos with it, and by the end, Jack has turned the whole island into a place of savagery. So now it comes to the original question. Is Jack a vampire? Well, if you mean in a way you see in horror movies and Hotel Transylvania, then no, he isn't. But if you mean in a literary sense, like how Thomas Foster had described, then yes. In Lord of the Flies, Jack functions as a literary vampire by feeding off fear, the boys' loyalty, and their innocence, leaving behind chaos. Foster puts it best when he explains in chapter 3, page 21, "My guess is that as long as people act toward their fellows in exploitive and selfish ways, the vampire will be with us." We saw this with Jack in the story, that the vampire can be anyone rather than just being some supernatural creature. Lord of the Flies isn't just a story of boys stranded on an island, but to show us how fear, power, and loyalty can turn someone into a monster. Well, that's it for today. Thank you all for listening, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.